Lesson 2, Pronunciation. Lisa, for me as a native English speaker studying German, one of the big challenges for me is that when I look at a German word, it doesn't sound the way I expect it to based on the way it's spelled. In other words, when I look at the word and try to sound it out, I sound it out with English sounds, the sounds that I would expect those letters to have in English. But when I do that, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like the real German way to say it. The vowels are often different, and sometimes the consonants have a different little something to them, a different sound than what I would expect as an English speaker.
Mm-hmm.
So here in Lesson 2, we have some words that we have put here to help our readers study this very thing, the differences between German pronunciation and English pronunciation. Could you take us through some of these and point out the differences between English and German pronunciation?
Yes. So in this chapter, the first example that we have is Hund, and that is actually one of the things that are very important to notice about German that is different from English. When you have a D at the end of the word, it is pronounced like a T instead in German. They call it the final voice hardening or Auslautverhärtung in German.
I guess that's the German term for it.
So actually, when you hear me talking English, you might detect that in my accent, because I have trouble when I try to say an English word that ends in a D to actually pronounce it as a D. I'm so used to pronouncing it as a T.
Well, when you've been doing it one way your whole life, it's hard to change to something different when you learn a new language.
Exactly.
So let me say a quick word about this as well for our listeners. Think for a moment about the D that comes at the end of this word, okay? The letter D, in English, when we say it, we vibrate our vocal cords as we say the letter. So we say Hund, okay? So when I say that D, my vocal cords are vibrating. So we say that's a voiced consonant, okay? That's a linguistics term. But if I do not vibrate my vocal cords while I say it, it turns into a T, okay? So I'm going to say the same exact thing. I'm going to say Hund, but without vibrating my vocal cords at the end. Hund, okay? So the difference here between the D sound and the T sound is whether or not your vocal cords are vibrating as you say it. Okay, so again, if it's a D and your vocal cords are vibrating, that's what we call a voiced consonant. If your vocal cords are not vibrating, we say that's voiceless or unvoiced. So really the D sound and the T sound are the same mouth movement. They're the same articulation of sound, but the difference is whether or not your vocal cords are going as you say it. And so D and T form kind of a pair. They're a pair of consonants. One is voiced and one is voiceless or unvoiced. And so in linguistics, we call these stops.
There's 2 more pairs we could add to this. It's the B and P sound and the G and K sound.
That's exactly right. G and K form a pair, just like D and T. G and K are the same, except G, when you say a G, your vocal cords are vibrating, and when you say a K, they're not vibrating. So G and K form a pair of voiced and unvoiced, and also P and B. P and B are the same. B is voiced, B, but P is unvoiced, P. P. Okay? So P and B form a pair. So in our repertoire of sounds, as English speakers, we have 3 pairs of stops, voiced and voiceless stops. So a quick note for our listeners. When you're studying German, you're going to have to pay special attention to these consonants that come at the end of words, like Hund. You're going to have to make sure that you pronounce it the way it would be in German, often in an unvoiced or voiceless way, instead of the way you're accustomed to saying it as an English speaker. So instead of Hund, you'll say Hund. Okay, so pay special attention to the endings of words, the final consonants of German words, and that will help you get an authentic pronunciation. Okay, so let's move on a bit to our next word. Now, Lisa, when I look at this word as an English speaker, I see the letter S, and I want to make a hissing S sound. I want to say son or something like that. But that's not correct German pronunciation, is it?
No, it's not. You would pronounce it Sohn. So when you see an S at the beginning of a word, you have to be careful not to fall into the trap and pronounce it like the English S, but more like a Z, Sohn.
Okay, let's move on, Lisa. Let's see if I can butcher another German word here to help our listeners learn. As an English speaker, I look at this next word, V-A-T-E-R, and I want to say Vater with a V sound at the beginning, but that's a complete mispronunciation.
Yes. This one is Vater. You see the resemblance to the English word father. So when you have a V, it is, in the Germanic words, it is pronounced like an F. Sometimes you may have some loan words from other languages, like let's say verb. Then we actually do pronounce it as a V sound. But many, many times you will want to pronounce it as an F. Vater.
And another very important point that I'd like to emphasize here, listen to the way Lisa is pronouncing the R at the end. She's not saying Vater with an English R sound. She's pronouncing it with an open R sound, and we'll get to that later. So listen again to how she pronounces it. It's almost like the end of the word is like AH, like an ah sound. Lisa, would you mind pronouncing it one more time for us?
Of course. It's Vater.
Okay, so a quick review. The V at the beginning of the word sounds like an F in English pronunciation, and the R at the end has an open sort of ah kind of sound. Okay, so make sure you practice that and pay special attention to those features. Okay, let's move on to our next sound, and that's the CH sound in German. Lisa, this is really tricky for English speakers who are learning German. There's a lot of room for error here. Is there anything you can tell us about the CH sound in German that will help our listeners to get a grip on this and to start to pronounce it with an authentic kind of pronunciation?
Yes, you are right. This is very tricky. When you try to pronounce it at first, you might try to do like a sh sound. That's not quite correct. But that's a sound that English has, so a lot of English speakers make that mistake. This one, we have actually two versions. One is the ch sound, like in ich or mich.
So now let's talk about the next sound, noch and buch.
The other sound is more in the back of your throat, so you would actually raise the back of your tongue to try to do it.
Like J.S. Bach, the composer.
Yes, or...
That's when it's in the back of your mouth, like...
Yes, that's very good.
So what we're saying here is that there are two different kinds of CH sound in German. Two ways to say CH.
Exactly.
So one of them is like ich, and the other is in the back of the mouth, like Bach.
Yes.
So when you see a German word that has a CH in it, you have to know the correct way to to say it?
Yes. It comes hopefully a little natural because the first one, the ich, where it's more in the front of your mouth, it starts with a front vowel too, the I. If you try to say the I, you will see that the front of your tongue is lifted. So the sh sound is also in the front.
Oh, that makes sense.
Whereas the a, o, u sounds, they're more in the back. And the sh stays in the back.
Because your mouth is more open.
Exactly.
So the CH sound changes depending on what vowel sound it's working with.
That's right.
Yeah, I never realized that before until just now when you mentioned it.
Well, that's very good to know. But as I said, I think it will come a little natural at least. If you're having a front vowel, you will be more inclined to actually pronounce the sh in the front too.
So in the word ich, that's ICH, it's not in the back of your throat. The way we're saying it here in the book is that it's like the beginning of the word huge, with air whooshing over the top of your tongue.
Yes. Maybe think of I read somewhere, think of a cat hissing, making a hissing sound.
I have a funny story here. A good friend of mine is from the Midwest, from the Cincinnati area. And so we were talking about the word huge, and I was explaining to him that in the German book, we were going to explain how to make this CH sound by talking about the word huge. And when you say huge, at the beginning of the word, there's air rushing over the top of your tongue. And that's how people can try to say this authentic CH sound in German. And he informed me that in the part of the country where he lives, they don't say the H sound at the beginnings of words like huge or like the word human. He said that out there they say huge instead of huge. They don't have that puffing air sound at the beginning. So they're not really accustomed to making this sound.
Oh, I see. So for them, it's going to be even more difficult to try to do this sound.
So if you're from the Midwest and you don't say huge, instead you say huge, well, you might have a little more work to do here. You might have to practice a bit more to try to get this German sound. So for you folks, it might take a little extra effort. Okay, that's all we have for Lesson 2. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time in Lesson 3.